Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.
Hello!
And welcome to Behind the Mirror of Music. This week's guest is Mardie Millit.
Mardie Millit is a singer, actor and writer and the recipient of the 2024 MAC Award for Best Female Vocalist. She has appeared regionally, Off-Broadway and Off-Off Broadway, in a slew of classic musical theatre roles, including Maury Yeston's Phantom and My Fair Lady, and in premieres of original shows by the likes of William Peter Blatty, Billy Stritch and Mark Waldrop. Her recent theatrical endeavours have been with Vanessa Paradis's Dream Productions, playing Joanne in Company and the baker's wife in Into the Woods, among others. She and her husband and creative partner Michael Gorin have collaborated on stage in musical projects including Sorry Grateful, a Sondheim song cycle recounting Mardie's decades-long pen friendship with Stephen Sondheim, and have now started work on a musical, Mary Esther's Purple Diary, currently in development. You can listen to the songs at maryesthermusical.com.
I hope you will enjoy the show.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. What are you doing right now in your work and career?
I'm at a very interesting spot right now because I've been a performer all my life, and it's all I ever really wanted to do. I used to write poetry in college. I enjoyed doing that, but I always knew performing was my number one thing. And suddenly, a few years ago, this project fell into my lap to write the book of a musical. My husband, Michael Gorin, is a composer lyricist. He's been working on this musical for a few years called Mary Astor's Purple Diary, about the 1930s movie actress Mary Astor and a contemporary illustrator, Ed Sorel, who has an obsession with her and draws pictures of her. Anyway, he's been working on it for a while, and he'd had a couple of different book writers, and I was like, they weren't really getting his vision, and I was just sort of watching the whole thing because it wasn't my project. And I found myself thinking, geez, this last one really wasn't very good. He fired like 2 or 3 people from the project. And I was like, even I could probably do a better. Oh no, it's going to be me. And I just had this vision that I was going to end up writing the book to this musical, even though I've never done such a thing and never wanted to do such a thing. It's not something that anybody dreams about, like on career day. Nobody says, I want to be a librettist. Nobody ever says that. So, but this was during the pandemic, and we were doing a lot of things that we never thought we'd do. And I thought, I'm going to take a crack at it. And now I wrote a draft, and we have a director, Carl Andrus, who's wonderful at directing and also at sort of shepherding this project along. And I wrote a first draft, and we had a reading of it. Things were beginning to open up then. Carl came over to our apartment, and the three of us read through the script. And I thought that at the end of it, he would say, Mardie, thank you very much for getting us started. It's now time to turn this project over to a real playwright. Thanks for all you've done. And when we finished the reading, he said, I think we're in pretty good shape. Let's move on to the next step. And I was like, I'm going to be allowed to do this? I'm really doing it? Okay. So that's how I became a book writer of a musical. And I'm still performing. Michael and I have a duo cabaret act that we do together. But I just won the MAC Award for Best Female Vocalist in 2024. I'm very proud of that. We worked very hard to get that. But most of my creative energy is going into writing this musical. So very interesting from having been a performer all my life, writing from that perspective, because when I'm writing dialogue, I approach it like an actor. You know, I get into character and then sort of improvise as that character. So I get to play every character in the musical. It's really a blast.
So amazing. It's a big switch, but also still in your lane, so you can be, I think, yourself in writing.
Yeah, it's using aspects of my brain that I never thought I was going to use in my work. And it's been very challenging. But another thing that has surprised me about this work is my ego is not involved in my writing the way it is in my performing. If somebody's going to give me a critique of my performance of something, they need to do it very kindly and very gently. Right? But with my writing, if we've had a couple of readings of the work, and if our director, and we're now working with a producer who's shopping it around, they they're giving me notes and they're like, this scene doesn't work. I don't think this character should even be in the show. And I'm like, okay, it's out. It's out. Let's, write something else. And it's it's a beautiful feeling to not uh feel protective of my work. And I have no idea why I don't feel protective of my writing the way I do of my performing, because my performing, I guess, feels like my own soul coming out. And writing, I just want the show to be a success. So I don't, I'm a person that doesn't like to use the word journey, but this has really been a fascinating journey.
I think writing can be therapeutic in a way, and maybe because it's fresh and new for you, you still think you also feel like you're learning when you're getting critique or something.
Yes, I'm definitely still learning, but I think what you said is true. It's in a way it's freeing because, well, for one thing, as a woman in musical theater, I was always limited by my age, my looks, my height. Are my boobs too big? Are my legs too short? I mean, now I have pink hair because I sing cabaret, and that was a very freeing thing. But writing an entire show and being able to say, well, now I'm a 58-year-old man, or now I'm a 35-year-old movie star in the 1930s, or now I'm Dorothy Parker. I got to write a whole scene uh, of the Algonquin Round Table, a scene among all of those characters. And I basically got to play all of those roles while I was writing it. And it's especially for women, when we're always in show business, well, not just in show business, we're always boxed in by society's view of us and expectations of us. When you're writing, there are no limits.
Absolutely, it's true. I've written in the past, and I really want to get back to it, but hearing you talk about it really makes me miss it.
Well, good. Maybe you'll get back to doing it too.
Yes.
I was at I went to a church service this morning for the first time in like 20 years, because a friend of mine is an Episcopal priest and he was a guest preacher at this church in Hell's Kitchen. And the musical director at the church, I knew him very slightly, but we had a long conversation because it turns out he's writing a musical too, but he's doing it all, book, music, and lyrics. And
Oh,
he's
yeah.
writing a musical, yes, and he's based it on a Virginia Woolf novella, and I can't remember the name of it. If I said it, you would probably recognize it. But we were both talking about how much fun it is to write from the perspective of a character living in a different time period from us. It's another thing that's, you wouldn't expect it to be freeing. You would think it would be like, oh, I have to keep in mind that it's actually a wonderful exercise. It feels like time travel.
That's so true. And also researching some things from the time period makes you realize things that you never knew sometimes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love going down like Wikipedia rabbit holes or YouTube rabbit holes or whatever, just reading articles about things. Um, I love history, and I love, I guess for lack of a better term, sociology. I love relationships between and among people. I love studying that, and I really enjoy learning about sort of the social customs of different times and different cultures. I read a lot of Jane Austen. That's sort of my hobby. That's my escape. And going back to a time where, at least in the book, it's a very peaceful time. I know that if I, Mardie Millit, lived in that time, I would find it incredibly oppressive. But uh, going back in time to the early 1800s, to an agrarian England before the invention of steam engine. It's talk about peaceful, no sounds except horses I mean, there was noise in the city, certainly, but it was uh, carriages and horses' hooves on cobblestones. Hard to imagine.
True, I think we moved so far away from that in this time.
So far from it.
Why?
And so on the cusp of another, as they were on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution, we're on this cusp of AI taking over. I mean, they're trying to make it take over the jobs of writers, and I think they're going to fail at that. I think these guys in suits are finding out that you actually need humans to write things. At least
Yes,
I hope they'll learn that.
I hope that too, because well, it's everywhere now because they keep advising me to use it with whatever I do, or even when I want to reply on Facebook, they say reply with AI. I mean, I want to write my own answers.
Yes, exactly. It gives me a feeling of dread in the pit of my stomach whenever I see that on any website or app. Why don't you try our AI? As soon as I start up my phone, why don't you try the AI assistant? I'm like, get away from Skynet. I don't want to participate in humanity's downfall. It just feels like it just feels like it's a very slippery slope. Now, I'm an actress and a writer. I'm sure I know that I'm very dramatic about everything, but I'm extremely, extremely against using AI for anything. I don't care how handy it is. We're just helping them learn how to take over.
Yes, that really worries me too because I love musical theater and art and everything. I don't want a robot to come in and take over because it doesn't have
Exactly.
feelings.
It's been very disheartening to me to read a lot of comments from other people, and I belong to a bunch of Facebook groups. And a lot of people really don't understand why it's a violation of our essential humanity to let robots do this stuff. They just don't get it. They're like, oh, why are you must not be very good if you're worried about a robot replacing you. It's like, it's not about not being very good. It's about the people in charge wanting to save money.
That's true because
That's what's going to be.
yeah, I know a few people who've been fired as voiceovers already because they think the computer can do it cheaper. But now you just hear robotic voices without any of the humor or the warmth that the human voices had.
I know it's absolutely. I don't like to use the word like terrifying, but I will say it's insidious to me. I got a survey from my favorite radio station, public radio station. How would you feel about having some of the station identification done by AI voice? And I was like, absolutely not. I want an imperfect human voice. Because the funny thing is, I'm always getting mad at the human voices on the radio station, the way they do the station identification, because the name of the station is WFUV. And the girl who does the station identification says WWFUV. And I get mad every time she says it, but I still don't want it to be a robot. I just want that girl to have better diction. So I'm very concerned about AI writing stuff, and I've seen a couple of like AI music videos. Somebody asked AI to write a funny song and make a music video of it, and it was really disturbing because the joke of the song was that AI had, you know how AI always puts people together a little bit wrong, it has your arm bending the wrong way or too many fingers or whatever. And so they decided to the robot made a song about why are my arms facing the wrong way, and that was supposed to be funny. And a friend of mine sent it to me because she thought it was hilarious, and I was like, this isn't funny. It's creepy and gross.
Yeah, you also have that they can use famous voices now.
Yes,
Yes.
and it's really bad for the famous people whose voices are getting cloned. It's also really bad for politics
Yes.
because unscrupulous political people can make video and voice of anyone saying anything. I'm not even going to talk about how that could be used in current American politics because let's not think about that right now.
True.
But it's chilling. It's chilling thinking about all of the different ways that this stuff could be used. And an acquaintance that I made last night at a party said, "But haven't you thought about all the good things it could do for us too?" And I said, "I'm sure there are good things that it could do. But the people who are in charge of this technology are not interested in helping the human race. I think they've proven that with their past action. They're only interested in making more money." Anyway, that's why we have to make more art. We have to write more things and sing more things and paint more things and draw more things and make a wave of creativity for the good of humankind. We have to drown out this wave of AI that's coming toward us. I don't know if we can, but that's what I intend to do. Just keep creating harder.
How did you fall in love with music and theater?
Interesting story, at least to me. I was very little. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. It was the early 1970s. So my family had one of those gigantic console record players with a radio in it. And I was I was having my mother put on Sesame Street records and Mr. Rogers records, which was the stuff that was watching on TV. And just on a whim, I said, I want a different record. My mom said, what do you want? And I said, I want that one. It had a cartoon on it, but it was the original cast album of My Fair Lady, which was the Hirschfeld caricature of Shaw with marionette strings controlling Rex Harrison, who had marionette strings controlling Julie Andrews. And my mother put that record on. And when that overture to My Fair Lady started, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. And this was, 50 some years ago. I'd never heard anything like it in my life. First of all, a full orchestra and the strings, dun, 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 yeah, da, 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 da. So I started dancing around the room and I wanted to listen to the whole thing. And of course, I asked my mother what it was. I had no idea. She explained to me, my parents liked musical theater, but musical theater was much more a part of our general pop culture in those days. Everybody's parents had a collection of LPs that included Broadway shows. So my mother explained to me that these people are acting out a story and they're singing about it. And I was like, that's a thing that people do. And I had not yet seen a Mary Poppins, I guess, or Sound of Music or any of that stuff. And as soon as I realized that that was a thing, I memorized the entire cast album. I was playing all the parts, singing all the parts. This is probably the reason I ended up having a big vocal range because I was singing all the men's parts too in their range, in their register. And once I devoured that one, I just wanted another one. And my parents had their small collection. And by the time I got to be 11 or 12-year-old, I was buying LPs myself. And then it was cassettes and CDs and just my parents started, we would take a long weekend trip every summer to New York from Ohio to see a couple of hit musicals. And I knew that was what I wanted to do. Just always wanted to be on Broadway. Came here to be on Broadway. Um, Unfortunately, the Broadway that I came here to be a part of was almost completely dead by the time I got here. I got here in 1989, and just the kind of singing that I do, which is more of the old-fashioned, legit Julie Andrews inspired kind of singing. It was already out of fashion when I got here. Um, it had already become a much more competitive game, and I was already behind, having not gone to one of the connected schools, college. So there are certain schools that you can go to when you graduate. You have an agent. They have an agent showcase at the end of your senior year. And so when you graduate and move to New York, you're already signed with an agent. Isn't that nice? I came here with $250 and a tenor boyfriend, um, and who also probably had about $250, and the phone number of a landlady in Washington Heights, and that was it. So um, I've always had to cobble together a living doing a lot of other things, and ended up I ended up singing in bars. I've actually done a lot of musical theater, but not on Broadway. I've done a lot of readings of new musicals, which has been, I love doing new material. I love uh, discovering new composers and lyricists, librettists. Um, I've been able to do, showcases and readings of a lot of stuff like that. And I did a lot old musicals in regional theaters in many, many states in this country. Just, summer theaters that always do. They're going to keep continuing to do the classic musicals. Sound of Music and My Fair Lady, and what else do they do? Guys and Dolls. There's a Phantom of the Opera musical by Maury Yeston, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with it. I see your
Yes.
Phantom thing behind you. Are you familiar with the Maury Yeston Phantom?
Yes, that's one of my favorites. So many,
I,
but that's one of my favorites.
it's really good.
Yeah.
I really love doing that show. I've done that in a few different places. So, but that was my voice type. So things aren't really being written for Broadway style sopranos anymore. So um, when I met my now husband, Michael Guerin, I was just at that point where I was going, I think maybe musical theater doesn't have a place for me anymore. And when I met him, he was playing 5 nights a week at the Monkey Bar on the East Side. And I would just come in and, be like the guest artist with him. And he and I began getting gigs together around the city. We played together at Elaine's, which was a famous celebrity hangout on the Upper East Side until Elaine Kaufman passed away. And, the Elaine's closed in 2011, and the city moves very fast. It's like it was never even there. It was a very important place while it was open, and as soon as it closed, it goes up like a wisp of smoke. Memories are gone. People don't even remember it existed. Anyway, we used to play there. We played at a lot of sort of late night bar restaurant places with pianos that uh where the clientele enjoys a good Gershwin tune or uh, some Sondheim or whatever. And then we started doing the sort of cabaret that has a narrative, a through line story. And we've been doing these shows at Don't Tell Mama and at the Laurie Beachman Theater. So it's cabaret, the kind of cabaret that we're doing actually is musical theater of a type, because I'm if I'm doing one, the show that I just did was about my 30 plus year correspondence with Stephen Sondheim. So I sing a bunch of Stephen Sondheim songs, and I tell the stories of my letters back and forth. I read some of the letters. I tell some of the stories of meeting him and all that stuff, and my own life when I was a teenager. And interspersed are a bunch of Sondheim songs that are pertinent to those stories. So it is musical theater. It's just the songs aren't my original songs, and it's a one-person show with a piano accompaniment. So it's been very interesting to put those together, and it was also good practice for writing the book of a musical.
Yes.
So it's funny how you can look back and see how things have been leading up to what you're doing, even though you could not see it at the time.
How did you get in touch with Sondheim when you were younger?
I used to write fan letters to people I admired when I was a little kid, and I don't remember how it started, but obviously my mother must have come up with this idea. For example, I loved Mr. Rogers, and she somehow got the address of the TV station in Pittsburgh, which was not far from where I grew up. And I wrote him a letter, dictated it to my mother because I must have been like 5 years old, and got a letter back from Mr. Rogers with a signed postcard with a picture of him and stuff. So this like got me going. So I had written to a Broadway actor called John Cullum. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He was in Shenandoah on the 20th Century. He was in Urinetown and Scottsboro Boys. Is that the name of that show? Anyway, so I wrote him a fan letter and he wrote back to me. And around this time, I had an acquaintance who was a writer here in New York, who I had written to because he had an advice column in a young women's magazine called Glam. Okay. So this guy was an aspiring musical theater writer, and I said something about liking Stephen Sondheim's work, and he said, his address is well known in theatrical circles, and he's known for answering all of his fan mail personally. This was 1980, before Stephen Sondheim was the huge deal that he became later, just 4 years later. So he gave me the guy's address. I wrote him a letter. Sondheim wrote back. And then I wrote back. And he wrote back again. Now, so once it happens twice, we kept it going for many, many years. That most of the letters happened when I was in high school and like my first year of college. So by the time I moved to New York, we were just writing a catch-up letter like once or twice a year. I always was very conscious of not wanting him to think I was trying to use him to get me a career. And now I wish that I had tried to use him to get me a career. I never wanted to be, a bother. I didn't want to be like too forward. I wish I had not been so polite back then. But he was very kind to me.
That's the same thing that you really wish you could ask someone something, but you just don't dare to do that.
Yes. And I have a lot more nerve now, of course. Now that it's too late. I have all the nerve that I should have had when I was young. But I had some great letters and great memories. And I learned so much. I mean, he taught me a lot about writing. He taught me a lot about the theater world and how to behave with people in it. He really detested what he called Broadway bitchery, this kind of, snarky, in-joke, insulting of other performers or writers. And I definitely tried to take to heart all the things that he taught me in those letters. And he encouraged my writing. As a matter of fact, the one letter from him that I have framed is in response to my poetry chapbook that I sent him. And as I say in my show, I do not know what possessed me to send him my poems. I thought my poems were good, but it wasn't like there was no reason for it that I can think of. But his response to it was unbelievably positive. He said that my poetry reminded him of W.H. Auden. Like, that's not the kind of compliment you ever expect to get for your writing. So he was very complimentary, and he said, I know that you want to sing, but I really think you should keep writing. And that letter happened in 1994, and it took until 2020 for me to take his advice. Some people are slow learners.
And you did some Sondheim musicals as well, as read in your CV.
Say that again?
You did some Sondheim musicals
Yes,
as well.
I have done a few, not as many as I would like, but I am a founding member of this theater company called Dream Productions, and we do staged readings of just shows that we want to do, most of which have turned out to be by Sondheim, because we're all sort of like-minded in this company. And we do them with an orchestra on stage with us, and we have a guy who takes these full or Broadway orchestrations and miniaturizes them so that we have 10 musicians on stage, all of whom are tripling and quadrupling on instruments. So there's guys picking up an oboe and a piccolo and a flute, and I don't know what they're doing back there. He's playing one out of his nose or whatever. But we have a very tiny orchestra that makes an incredible full orchestra sound. So with that company, I've gotten to play Joanne in Company and The Baker's Wife in Into the Woods. And we were about to do Sweeney Todd in 2020 when the pandemic hit. And since then, well, Stephen Sondheim died in 2021, and all of a sudden, our founder cannot get the rights to any Sondheim musical because they're all being done. You can't get the rights if there's a professional production being done within something like 60 miles, I think. So one year we did Pippin. I played the grandmother in Pippin, which was very fun. I played her as a Jewish grandmother. I had her calling Pippin Pippola, Pippo, Pippi Longstocking. Anyway, because we have a wonderful director, and she just basically let me do whatever I wanted to do as long as it made everybody laugh. So anyway, that was the one non-Sondheim thing that we did. And then when we came back, the only thing we could get the rights to was Side by Side by Sondheim. So that was the last show we did, which is now almost 2 years ago. We did not do a show this year. It's all produced and funded by one woman, Vanessa Paradis. And she, like me, has a survival job. I work at a law firm. She works for a finance firm. And she is basically an office manager. She makes a lot more money than me. And she said one year when she got her end of the year bonus, instead of just taking another European vacation or Caribbean vacation, why don't I do something that'll really help me and other people and get the rights to a musical that I've always wanted to do and just get my talented friends together and do it. And that's how Dream Productions started. So,
Amazing.
I mean, when you've got friends like mine, that's, that's how it started, friends saying, wouldn't it be cool to do this show with you guys? And I want this part, I want that part. And then just calling up people that we knew who we knew could do the other roles. I was casting Joanne as Joanne and Company via Facebook message. There was no audition. And Vanessa, at that time, I did not know her. But we had several friends in common. And she sent me a Facebook message and said, I'm going to be doing a staged reading of Company would you be interested in being in it? And I assumed that she meant like, you know, singing the offstage chorus, the vocal minority, you know. And I said, oh yeah, I assume you want me to play Joanne, LOL. And she was like, duh, yes. I said, you've never met me. And she goes, I've read your Facebook post. She said, I don't think you're going to have to act. And it was pretty true. I basically just said the line in that show. That was one of my favorite roles that I've ever played. So much fun. I would love to play that role again. Um, so that was how I was cast. It's very nice to be cast without having to audition for anyone.
Absolutely. It's,
I think auditioning is a killer of talent because auditioning and performing are two different talents, you know?
well, it's true because a person can freeze during an audition and then you can never see what they really are.
You have all this time to wait before you go in, and you should be preparing, obviously, but you're out there in some waiting room and there are other people who are waiting to do the same thing. Maybe you run into your friend and you're sitting there talking to them, and all of a sudden it's time for you to go in, and you have 5 seconds. Really, you only have 5 seconds because as soon as you walk in, they already know whether they're going to be paying any attention to your singing or not. And most of the time, they're not, because most of the time, the role has already been cast with someone that they've sent a Facebook message to, and they have to hold auditions. This is this is why they say it's important to go to the right school. You know, I don't mean to sound like a whiny little baby when I say I didn't go to the right school, but that's where you make your connections, and it's a valid way of doing business because like I said, when we do shows with Dream Productions, the four of us who are sort of we call ourselves the board of governors, we're saying, who do we want to play with? Who do we want to be in the sandbox with, right? And if you've worked with the person before and they were a drag, you don't want to have them back. And if you've never worked with a person before and you don't know anyone who knows them, it's a big risk. No matter how talented somebody is, it's a big risk to work with somebody that you don't know and who doesn't have, you know, a big Broadway resume to recommend them. So very hard to break in. So we created something and broke ourselves in.
That's an amazing way to start something because it sounds like such a great company just doing your shows you really want to do and getting a chance to
Yes.
creating your own chances, really.
Yeah. And it's you know, every show has sold out. We started out just doing 2 performances, and the last time we had to do 4 because people want to see this stuff. They want to see it done with an orchestra. That's the real draw, is to actually hear something very, very close to the original orchestration. Because usually you're going to get, you know, tracks, or worse yet, just the piano, bass, and drums in a showcase in New York. It's just too expensive to put up full production. So yes, that's been a wonderful, wonderful gift. And it's sort of, I like to say, it brought back what I call musical theater Mardie, because as much as I enjoy doing cabaret, doing those book scenes in a real musical, it's there's no feeling in the world like it. Being on stage with someone and exchanging dialogue and having that little dance of characters, the give and take when you're doing a scene with someone and they instinctively know what you need for that next moment that you have to do, and they sort of lob you a softball to help you out. When you're working with wonderful actors like that, and I've had the privilege to work with many people who are really generous on stage, it's, for my money, it's one of the best types of human to human experience there is.
So true. It's just well, watching it as well, it just feels like you're in a new world when you're watching someone, people who are really close and work together. It brings such a great feeling.
Yes, I mean, when, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's amazing. There's a thing that happens where you and your scene partner or partners or whatever take off, and the thing kind of flies on its own power, and it's a beautiful thing. It's why we do live theater.
How does it feel to sing the works of Sondheim for you?
It's I'm gonna quote a line from my own show. When I discovered the first Sondheim musical I ever listened to was Sweeney Todd, and it was when I was 13 years old. And as I say in my show, it was like being dropped onto a planet where my native language was spoken, only I was hearing it for the first time. I was hearing in his lyrics and music something that spoke to a part of me that I didn't know existed. The kinds of emotional and intellectual questions he was asking and answering and dealing with were just immediately fascinating to me. As a 13-year-old from a town of 3,000 people in Ohio, why? I have no idea. But it's, sometimes there's just a writer whose work really speaks to you. And sometimes that writer has nothing in common with you. I had nothing in common with him as a human being, but his work just hit me right in the kishkas. I don't speak Yiddish, but my husband does. It it uh, it it spoke directly to me in a way that I've never really been able to explain. Just be thankful for. And I like lots of musicals, and I like lots of composers and lyricists. I could name many that I admire and revere even, but nobody ever got inside my head and also inside my soul like Sondheim did. Hard to really pinpoint why.
I've been getting into him more and more, and because his lyrics speak to me now more than ever before these days, because there's so much feeling inside his work, and it's it's a weird thing because he was so perfect with his lyrics that I'm now starting to get annoyed when things don't work in other people's lyrics.
Yes.
That I can hear, well, that line really didn't fit the melody.
He's kind of spoiled me for everybody else.
Yes.
A friend of mine was doing a reading of the new musical, and she showed me some of the lyrics, and she said, it's kind of weird. It's a musical about penises. I don't think you're ever going to hear about it. But anyway, it's a musical about penises. And I was like, okay, let's see. It's supposed to be funny. And I looked at the lyrics and I said, all right, I'm putting this down because the first rhyme isn't even a perfect rhyme. The first rhyme in the show is not a perfect rhyme. So Sondheim has spoiled me for all other lyricists. I'm not inclined to be generous with people when it comes to the craft of lyric writing. And that's probably not nice of me, because there are actually a lot of things being written in the sort of pop musical theater genre that I like a lot, where the lyrics are not always perfect rhymes. They're not always perfectly crafted, but the music in a lot of cases is really beautiful and touching and exciting. There are a lot of really exciting young musical theater singers that I hear around nowadays, and that is the kind of singing that I just don't do. I mean, can I sing really loud with no vibrato and belt really high? I mean, I can, but other people do it better. That's also a line from a Sondheim show. That's in Franklin Shepherd Inc. He does the music thing very well. But you know what? Other people do it better. Everything is a Sondheim lyric for me.
But I think there should be a place for all kinds of voices, actually, because it's so strange to me that people just can't get work or place just because their voice is or isn't in fashion. I think that's just
But you
yeah.
know, they're out to sell tickets, and the yes, the fact is, if you put legit voices in a show, people do like it. There are people that like it, but you'll also find a whole bunch of TikTok videos of vocal coaches watching legit singers and going, I'm sorry, but why would anyone think that that sounds good? It's just disgusting the way they have vibrato. And I'm like, well, guess that's that. No more singing with vibrato anymore since this. I mean, TikTok. TikTok is a cesspool. Anything that the worst of humanity is being displayed on TikTok at any given moment. So anything you want to hear a very bad opinion on, it's on TikTok.
You should just search every video until you get the opinion you want.
Yes, exactly. Just spin the wheel.
I just noted that there are a lot of people who still like these voices, very young people as well, because I'm in musical groups and they say they miss the old style a lot.
I think it's going to come back around, but probably after it's already too late for me to play, Liza Doolittle. But I did get to play it in regional theater. I was the second understudy to the lead, and I didn't have any costumes, and they had never let me rehearse because it hurt the first understudy's feelings. I wasn't allowed to rehearse. I had no costume, and there was a flu bug going around. This was like 1998. There was a flu bug going around, and both the leading lady and the first understudy got sick and could not sing. And they called me in the morning and said, "You're going on tonight." And I said, "Am I going to have costumes, or am I just going to be wearing like a black leotard?" He said, "No, we're having costumes flown in." All right. So they were sewing me into the costumes backstage during the quick changes. And luckily, remember that story I told you about My Fair Lady?
Yes.
About how it was the first record I ever heard? Well, I also got made my parents buy me the script. And I started learning those lines when I was 5 years old. And I certainly knew all the songs. I could have sung anybody's role in that show. I was in the chorus. I could have sung Henry Higgins if I'd had to. Luckily, I didn't have to. But so I was off book. I wasn't worried. I wasn't worried about any of that. I was worried that I didn't know the choreography to Wouldn't It Be Loverly? And that was it. That was the rest of the time, the guy who was playing Higgins was very generously leading me around on stage. Remember what I said about being on stage with an actor who is generous? That guy is one of them. His name is David Stoller. He now has a theater company of his own called the Gingold Group, which has a thing called Project Shaw. They do almost nothing but the works of George Bernard Shaw. So he's gone on to do a lot of wonderful creative things, but as an actor, he's one of the most generous scene partners I've ever had. When somebody saves you on stage like that, when you're in a bind at going on as an understudy, you never forget it.
What's your favorite stage memory, either in the
Stage
musicals
memory.
or cabaret?
Wow, I was not prepared for that one. But I will say probably the story that I tell the most often is from that My Fair Lady I was just telling you about, where I went on with no rehearsal. David Stoller, who was playing Higgins, came up to me right before the show started, and they were literally sewing me into my opening costume. And while they were doing that, he said, I don't want to distract you, but I want to let you know in Act 2, there's one scene where there's a blackout. and the chorus members are moving a lot of furniture, and I don't want you to get hurt. So when that scene happens, just stand still, don't move. I will come out on stage and get you, and I'll lead you off stage. And I was like, wow, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. He said, don't mention it. I mean, it's the least I can do. So we get to the scene, and the blackout happens, and I stand still, and I feel from behind me 2 arms clasping me around the middle, arms and all. My arms are at my sides, and he picks me straight up and carries me off into the wings. And I was silently, cracking up. But that is an actor looking out for another actor. That's why I mean, that was one of the reasons I always tell that story, because I mean, it's a hilarious story, but it's also, that's what we do for each other in the theater when we really care about our craft. He could have left me out there to fend for myself. I would have made it off stage. He could have come out and tried to lead me by the hand off stage, but his instinct told him to do the dramatic thing, also because it would be faster. And he did the most expedient thing, he did the kindest thing, and he did the best thing for the show as a whole. And there's kind of a code among stage actors when you're working with a real mensch when somebody does something like that. So that probably is my favorite stage memory.
Sounds like a really lovely person.
Say again?
Yes, he sounds like a really lovely person.
Yes, yes. And you meet a ton of them doing musical theater. You meet a lot of really, really wonderful people who choose to do this, which no one's getting rich at, even at the top levels of musical theater, unless you're already a movie star or TV star coming in to slum in musical theater. People aren't getting rich doing musical theater. So most of the people doing it are doing it to fulfill some real artistic need. Now, there are also people who are just doing it because they like people to look at them, and they're idiots. There are idiots in every profession. Most of my experiences in musical theater have been good ones. Very lucky. One time I did a straight play in the Fringe Festival when they still had a New York Fringe Festival. It was a wonderful, wonderful play by a terrific playwright. And the director, on the first day of rehearsal, and I couldn't wait to do this play because of how well it was written. It was a beautifully crafted script. First day of rehearsal, the director says, he closes the book and he says, well, we're going to work against the text. But there's all kinds of people out there. And we ended up having a good time doing that play. And the director who said that has gone on to direct a lot of other things. And I'm doing cabaret, so what do I know? But now what I'm trying to do with our Mary Astor musical is I'm trying to write the kind of dialogue that I want to see. I'm trying to write the scenes that I want to see on the stage, which is really all you can do. You can't try to write for the public, because whatever's in fashion right now, like we were just talking about with voices, it could change in 5 minutes. So you can only write to please yourself. Write the show that you want to see. Michael is writing the songs that he wants to hear. I'm writing the scenes that I want to see about people learning things about themselves through their relationships with each other, which I think is all that our time on earth is about. Learning about ourselves and our purpose here on earth by our interactions with other people. Other people are all we've got in the end.
It's true. It sounds like a wonderful story.
I'm sorry, what was the thing? What was the last thing you said?
Yes, it sounds like a wonderful story because
Yeah, I
yes.
think our musical is going to be a wonderful story. It has a little old Hollywood, it has a little magic, and it has some romance, and it has some maybe a little time travel in it. And but it's really a story of two people who are each of whom is at a crossroads and how they have to learn about themselves through talking to each other to get to the next phase of their lives and move on. So it's a musical fairy tale for adults is what we're calling it. Mary Astor's Purple Diary.
I would love to see it or at least hear it in the future because it's a
Well,
yeah.
you can hear the songs actually at maryastormusical.com. So it's MaryAstor musical, all one word, .com.
I'm going to check
We have demo recordings, and we actually got Broadway star Kate Baldwin to play Mary Astor on our recording, and we have Broadway star Max Crum playing Ed Sorrell. And then on this recording, basically Michael Guerin and I are playing almost all of the other roles. So we're singing the entire ensemble. And then we have one other character actor named Edward Huvier, a wonderful Broadway, off-Broadway, and regional theater, constantly working actor, Edward Huvier, playing a couple of the supporting roles, and then Michael and I play everybody else, and double and tripling our voices in the chorus. It was a lot of fun to put together.
I can imagine. It sounds like such a great project.
It's been a blast putting it together, and I'm about to do another rewrite of the script because we have a Broadway producer who is shopping it around to theaters that might be interested in doing a developmental reading or developing the thing as a full production or whatever they're into. That's the producer's job. I don't know anything about that, but we have someone shopping it around, and we've had a couple of nibbles, nothing definite yet, but we hope to have a real production of it at a professional theater sometime soon. Maybe I'm going to knock on wood. Hang on, I'm going to reach over to my piano. Maybe in the fall. But it's been kind of wild to see this thing sort of getting ready to take off. People seem to be interested in it. Old Hollywood and magical realism. There's a lot of laughs. I'm trying to write as many laughs as I possibly can. I have a list of friends that I would love to be in this show. And then, of course, in the end, it's not going to be my call. It's going to be the director. So it's very funny to be in this position that feels like a position of relative power. But when it comes to the actual production of the show, I will have no say in it at all. But I love watching other people say my words. It's pretty great. We've had one reading of the musical in November of 2022. We had a reading, and it was the first time I've ever heard other people saying my lines. It was a great learning process. I cut a lot of lines that day. It was a very, very fast college education in script writing.
I think I've got the questions.
What? Is that all the questions?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. We had a couple of technical glitches, but I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Me too. You're really such an inspiring person to talk to.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
glad. It's hard to be inspired or inspiring these days a lot of the time. And so I'm happy to have something like having this conversation with you. It's been very good for my soul to be able to talk about art instead of worrying about the world for the last hour and a half. So thank you.
Thank you. You made me think about starting writing again, actually. So
Good. Do it. everybody that has the impetus should get out there and do it, or get in there and do it, you know. Sit in your cave with your candle and your inkwell.
Get this strange idea for a story that I started writing a few years ago, but I stopped because well, I got into mental health issues and everything, and then just it didn't really feel good enough to do things.
Right. But you know, sometimes getting back to writing or performing or whatever your creative thing is the last stage of your healing. Or not even the last stage, but it can be an important stage of your healing. For me, I always think, oh, I'm not feeling well enough to sing. I'm too depressed to sing. The world is too terrible a place for me to sing. And it's like, wait a minute. My singing improves the world. And I think we as artists need to remember that. Everything we contribute goes into the greater universe as a force of good. And everything we contribute helps everybody else who's contributing. We're all contributing to that. I don't know why I'm making this gesture. It's as if it's a giant ribbon of creativity that helps to hold up all of the good things in the world. Because, you know, without art, we wouldn't have any of the good stuff. And so everything we contribute to that matters. It really does. And what you contribute matters too. Just keep doing it. Whatever it is in whatever path it finds its way out of you. If you have the impetus to do it, do it.
I'll try to start again.
I hope you do.
Thank you
Let
so
me know
much.
how it goes.
I will.
Thank you. Okay. Great talking to you.
Great talking to you as well.
Take care.
Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.